fama que assim é feio pini moe. Mesmo é certain, consciência de cabuleu. Moe certain, tu pode de cabuleu. Ao te ble com moe amicie.
Samodo basal teye.
O te ble é mo puissant.
Samodo basal teye.
O te ble é mo la clé.
Samodo basal teye.
Que sama já fez o banhe.
Samodo basal teye. Muyo coco,
Esse é um café moe.
muyo coco,
O feio pini moe.
muyo coco,
O feio quase moe.
muyo coco, muyo coco,
Esse é um café moe.
muyo coco,
O feio pini moe.
muyo coco.
Welcome to Bloombox.
O veraneia fegue sa o café moe. O fama que assim moe feio pini moe. Mesmo é certain, consciência de cabuleu. Moe certain, tu pode de cabuleu. Ao te ble com moe amicie.
Samodo basal teye.
O te ble é mo puissant.
Ha! Samodo basal teye. Good day, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome, guys. Welcome. I see Shara saying, "Muela." Let me just make sure my AirPods and you guys hear me clearly. I need some people on the live to give me a thumbs up and let me know that they're tuned in. I am so happy to be back here with you guys. Feeling a little bit under the weather, but you know how it is. You know how it goes. We got to keep it moving. We got to keep it pushing. And it is an exclusive interview. My God, this interview is a long time coming. Let me know if you're under the live, if you hear me okay. I'm just making sure that my AirPods are connected properly because I'm hearing elsewhere, but it could also be the flu. So you know them kind of things. Let me just change and put the other one in just to make sure. Voila. Okay. I seen all you. Yes. I seen you popping in. I seen everybody popping in. Welcome aboard. Welcome. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. Coming through. Mwela, kefa mwen vwe. Nani, abaveka in the house. Tassians have landed. Okay? The Tassians have landed. Valina is there, nice and clear. Perfect. Thank you, my dear. Appreciate you guys. We have for you. We have a pack show. Thank you, Brittany. Thank you, my love. Thank you, T Bell. Thank you, my guy. Show is sponsored by Boombox. Wanna big them up? Boombox. Thank you very much for sponsoring. Let me tell you, for entrepreneurs like me out here in the streets, when companies like Boombox say, yes, JL, we know you're having a show and we want to sponsor, that brings me joy because it allows me to continue to bring these wonderful stories to you because you know what? My belly doesn't survive off of air, right? Man have to eat, right? So big up to Boombox. Thank you very much for your kind sponsorship. Boombox is located on Federation Drive, and you know they offer a wide range of items from seedlings to gardening equipment, landscaping services, you name it, irrigation they have a massive amount of things available at Boombox on Federation Drive. I want to big up Imad, the proprietor of Boombox. And guys, thank you so very much for your kind sponsorship. Today, let me tell you, today might be a hard show for me because I little on the emotional side because I sick. You know, I'm not feeling 100%. But in addition to that, the person that we're interviewing is somebody that I have known. We've known each other all our lives, we can say, right? Right, Brendon? He's shaking it. We've known each other all our lives, and to have somebody like that, you know, come on the show, you know, and to even just know that he's doing such wonderful things. We have really amazing people from Itasi, you know, out in the streets doing the most. And Brandon is somebody that Dominica should be very, 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 very proud of. Let me tell you, very, very proud of, because he could have been anyone or anywhere. He could have been doing anything with his life, and he's doing wonderful things. And I know, like, Janice is on there. Janice said, "If you're making me prettier, girl, let me tell you, it's rough." He could have. Let me tell you, Brandon is an amazing individual. We try and stay in touch, but we never lost touch. So we've always had each other's numbers, and we reconnected again recently, and we started talking on WhatsApp. It was so funny because we started talking on WhatsApp, and for like 2 hours, man, on WhatsApp, and my fingers and them cramping. I think about Brandon, look what days there's there. Let's just video call each other. So we video chatted, and we were on the phone. I kid you not, we probably spoke for almost 6 hours, Brandon. It was almost 6 hours on the phone, you know, catching up and getting an understanding as to who he is now, because you know, sometimes you think you know somebody, or you think you know something about somebody, but you have no idea. Like, you watch me out here and you're probably thinking, you know, Jael life like an open book, but you ain't got the slightest clue, because Brandon was able to, like, you know, really talk to me about how he's evolved, and how, you know, his values, and so many different things. And we spoke for the only reason why we're probably not speaking still on the phone is because we both had to go and pee. and that is what ended the conversation. But it was so great catching up with Brandon, and just knowing how much he's bloomed, you know, and blossomed, I should say. You know, he's an amazing young man. As I say, Dominica should be proud. Shady Live, you see, I don't have to tell all you. All you should know what y'all need to do when you come on my live. Like, you don't come and start talking until you share the live, right? Big up to you, Nadisha. I know you share the live every single time. What Shara said there? See me Shiva. When Caleb. Shara said she go. Shara, let me tell you. I have my rag. Because I told you, I only thought like I was joking. I legit have my rag, because I might be strong and I might be able to go through this because the way Brandon speaks and stuff is he has a comforting demeanor about him, and people who are not from Bakers might be wondering, but what Jael is talking about there? You know, and what all of these young Italians talking about, and why they getting so excited, and why they on the live and they all hyper in the sports, right? Stay tuned. Stay tuned to find out, right? Share the live in the meantime. Janice is saying, I'm so proud of this young man. I watch him grow up. The struggle was real. You know, a lot of folks are coming on and sharing and saying how much they truly appreciate, and you know, they're showing some love to Brandon. I I don't have a laline like I normally do, you know, because I have a little bit of a cough. So every now and again I have to take a little breather, a little pause for the cause, right? So yes, I don't know what it is, if it's called boycott or whatever it is. I was not in Dominican Carnival, so anywho, we need to take a pause again, you know, for the cause. I want to pick up my sponsors. You know, without them, this would not be possible. So I want to say thank you very, very much to the folks out at Bloombox. Thank you for your kind sponsorship. We're gonna take a short break. Let me get some water, and then we're gonna bring on Brandon Roberts, the master grower. If you want to know about cannabis, you want to know, I can't tell you everything. You have to buy his books. We're coming back right after this.
Welcome to Bloombox.
All right, we're back. We're back. And we're ready. I hope you guys are ready for today's show. Um, so I'm gonna see how far I can take it, how far back I can go before I start. So I've known Brandon since I was a young girl growing up. He's younger than me. I think Brandon is about 4 years younger than me, thereabout, right, Brandon? About 4 years younger than me. And he grew up 2 houses from our house. So there was Father Shapley's house kind of was the house between our house. So if you know Father Herman Shapley's, on from that angle, that so Brandon grew up in front of Father Shapley's house, and we grew up behind Father Shapley's. So I grew up behind their house. So I knew Brandon. Troublesome little boy, let me tell you, troublesome. and he's laughing. He's laughing in the lobby. But we grew up, you know, normal kids. You know, he went to school in Vegas. I went to school in Portsmouth for the most part. But I would always see, like, you could not miss seeing Brandon and his family, because when I would get off the bus would drop me right in front of their home. So Michael, who was our bus driver at the time when I was going to high school, he would drop us off like right there, and then I would cut across by Father Shapley's them, aka Mama Martha, aka Janice, and cut across to get to my house. Jump the drain, couple drains to get to our house, so I didn't have to go on the road. So that was a regular. Their home was a regular. I mean, I remember his grandmother, his mom, you know, his step grandfather. Like, I knew their entire home circle. But something really major happened, you know, when we were kids, and I'm gonna bring him on, so because I feel like, you know, it's his story, his story to tell. But we'll get to that. Without further ado, I want to welcome today Brandon. Hi, Brandon.
Bonsoir, Jael. This afternoon right here in British Columbia, and I know it's almost about after 6 in Dominica. So bonsoir tout Dominique, tout hot pays là, moun mwen avekaz, moi c'est on garçon vekaz, leve vekaz, moun Gwabi, all my students ranging from the Dublin area, Bioche, Coliho, Saint Joe, Kulibistri, Maho, Campbell, Massac, and some all the way from the Kinfield area. So good evening to everybody, and it's a pleasure to be joining the program, in particular to the sponsorship of Bloombox, where holding up horticulture and agricultural supplies on the island for Dominican farmers, which is very much important. Food security is a global growing issue, and we have almost 9 billion to provide food for. So these are everlasting businesses that we sought to support because they keep up the local farmers and extension services where bringing crops and seedlings to the doorstep of farmers where they can be much more productive in our rural communities and environment. So it's a pleasure to be here and to share with you guys my story and ways in which that can continue to inspire young people and middle-aged and even older age people from all parts and walks of life. So it's happy to be on your show. I'm Jael.
You making me almost cry. Like you must share, Brandon. How are you?
Well, it's the winter. We had a couple of snowstorms over the last couple of weeks, and the weather has been sort of warmed up nicely, and I can feel the spring is in the air. It's just about a month again, and we should be, gone clear. So no matter where you be in Canada, everybody normally wants the winter to come and go, and everywhere and all parts and nook and cranny that I have been to within the Canadian Peninsula, everybody tells me that summer, they boast their neck of the woods when it comes for summer. It's like, come here during the summertime, come here during, that's the mantra all throughout the country, whether you're in the Atlantic side in Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island and New Brunswick, or if you're in the western side above California into the Vancouver area and the Vancouver Island, everybody loves summer, no matter where you be in Canada, even in the prairies, going through Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Alberta. You got a lot of the sort of the farming for both hay and canola, rapeseed and lentils at big economies of scale, mass production. And it's one of my favorite areas to visit even during the summertime, because the fields and the crops, you can't see the ends of the farm. The end of the farm is not in sight. So it's quite a pleasure, particularly, in that summer leading to our sort of fall. It's one of the prettiest times to be in Canada.
You make Canada sound like this wondrous place now. Like even in speaking to you, when you explain to me all of the places that you've been, like you've only been there for a couple of years, and you've traveled like in every nook and cranny in Canada, and you have such wonderful stories. You make me envy wanting to. I actually told you next time you're going, I come in with you. I want to do a road trip, because you've gone to so many different places and you've experienced so many different cultures within Canada. You got me excited about Prince Edward Island, and like going on the bridge on that is it a suspending bridge, the one that goes across the Atlantic Ocean? So you got me excited about all of these things, and I'm like, boy, I'm in Canada longer than you study. So everywhere, more pack on that pass come Brandon, right? So you are just so much knowledge, and you inform yourself, and you travel so much. Why is it so important for you to always be all over Canada? Like, what takes you all across Canada?
Well, I mean, we call you Shelly while we were growing up, and I mean, now your name is Jael. You are Shelly. So sometimes
You call me Shelly. Call me what you want.
but I would say, in order for me to have become, in terms of agricultural, successful, I needed to know the layout of the land. Um, and if you don't know the lay of the land, it becomes almost impossible for you to translate and transfer information across broad different spectrums and different cultures within the different niches in the country. So the first step was finding out about the lay of the land and the agricultural revolution from its historical perspective, from the University of Guelph, which is sort of Canada's number one institution when it comes for agricultural sort of sciences and horticulture development. So, in understanding the lay of the land and understanding the agricultural revolution, because this was the sort of first industry that sparked the mass economies of scale that we have today, and laid down the foundation for the development in Canada and North America on a whole. So, transporting the grain from the prairies all the way into the US, and learning about how everything started, even from the first socialist sort of system under Tommy Douglas out in the sort of Prairie Saskatchewan area. That gave rise to the politics within its agricultural makeup in the onset of Canada's development. And it shows how everything connects today, that how we were able to sort of develop the infrastructure, how everything laid out from the land, and commerce and trade, and that led the sort of economic development that Canada experienced, and then boomed with the aided help of further technology, that you are now able to transform the agricultural sector into, a sector that provides food, and also surplus, that even these countries can afford to play the politics of food, and politics of food in aid to other countries that may not experience the same level of providing for their own people, or going for farming periods, and what have you not. So it become a very essential part and makeup of any society, that we know agriculture is sort of the foundation. And then once you get there, then you pick up over, and technology assists you to incorporate different areas of advancing the agriculture. And that's what makes it sort of inclusive and sort of holistic in approach, and pretty much the bedrock of majority of the development that is experienced within the first world countries. It all stemmed from the agricultural revolution.
You spoke of the foundation, and that's why you was the foundation. Knowing every nook and cranny was kind of what had to be set up in stage for you to be as Akua and know all of Canada, know all about Canada. You know so much more than even I do. But your foundation started in Dominica, in Vegas, on Benjamin Street in Vegas.
Yeah.
And I kind of started off excuse me, the program talking about, you've had so many different things happen to you in your life. And for you, tragedy struck at a very young age, at a very, very tender age. You lost your mom. But you didn't just lose your mom was taken from you, right? I want to kind of, I don't like to ask people, but because we've already spoken about this, and you've expressed your comfort in speaking about it, so we'll talk about it. But I remember, that dreadful day when, coming home from school, and like as soon as I was getting off the bus, I saw this guy on a motorcycle, with a knife in his mouth, and I didn't know what was going on. And I saw Janice and then my mom, and then everybody was screaming and crying. And for you, it was a different experience. Where were you when you heard that something had happened to your mother?
I believe at that time I was at the Vegas primary school. I think I was in the common entrance class. I believe that day we had a session with teacher Baba, Mr. Earlsworth. He resides in the US, I believe, now. And it probably was in the afternoon, so you had just probably came out from school, or primary school normally ends, I believe, at the time about 3:30 thereabout. And Kikis came. Kikis is Francilia David, who was sort of living at Lawi Deye for Miss Sonia and Mr. Popo, notorious fishermen in the area at the time. And she came and she spoke to the principal, I believe. We had just made a transition. I think it was Miss Margaret Romaine. And at that stage, they spoke to teacher Barber, and they told me that could go home. So I'm like, all my classmates are sitting um, inside, and me going home. For wondering, what's it's really about, because that day was my sister's birthday, Marie Claire. We call her Abigail, and we expected to go home. Our mom told us she's gonna make cake for us that day. It's my only sister sort of birthday, and we're gonna celebrate. So I'm wondering, we're going home, and it's roughly around after 2. So I'm walking down the road with Francilia. Francilia used to be an athlete as well, and she's now deceased. And she's telling me before we get to the road by the church, if I will cry, and if she tell me something, and I'm like, what it is, cry for what? Today's my sister's birthday. We're gonna celebrate and have cake, and that's what my mom told me. She told me, well, your mom is not alive. Your mom died. And I tell her, you must be joking. You're going down the road excited still. We pass by the church, and getting down into Vegas proper. And then once I hit the road, let's say around by Gregory, and saw the amount of people on the street, I'm like, something really serious happened. But at that time, I believe they had already taken away the body. She was still alive. Her esophagus was cut off. I think she asked for some water, and the water passed through her esophagus. Your mom, who was the nurse at the time attending to the situation, I believe Janice, the neighbor at the time, was also there as well. And I think it was a red van from Mr. Dixon out in the Tebow area, who was probably passing in the village at the time, and saw probably the commotion or the incident on the road, and they offered to take them away. And I believe, if my memory serves me well, it was on the way to around sort of Bonn. And I believe sort of Dodan Bonn from Vegas, tops you're looking at probably 20, almost 15 to 20, probably 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And that's where they told me she probably eventually took her last gasp, and she succumbed, unfortunately, from the tragedy.
How did you feel, Brandon, like when you lost your mom, like in that way, like how was life? What was life like for you after that moment?
Well, I would just say for me at that very instance, more anxiety. Yeah, you just say everything just gets seasoned and cold, and I didn't even think I cried. We grew up in an era where men don't cry and we have to be tough men, and we had to be in the society. It was not really where men really typically showed weakness and emotion. I mean,
Mhm.
in today's world, those men don't exist anymore. It's a more of a softened type of a, masculine type we get in today's society. So I just processed, what? She's dead already. There is nothing that I could do. But I remember one thing: I never really wanted my villagers to look down on me. I always wanted to continue to walk with my head up high. And that's from that time, that's the goal that I set for myself. And that's the main drive that really, because I mean, we lived in a very loving community. We live up to today in a very peaceful society. And pretty much everybody was struck by the tragedy, and it left a lasting impression on the minds of many within the community. So I knew that I had to be strong, not only for myself, not only for my family and my siblings, but most importantly, to carry that cross. It's like you're in a situation now. Your mom is taken. Your father is not really there, and, so you pretty much, you have to put your mind in order. What do you say before? Put water in your wine. And that was the main sort of drive at that time in my mind, that essentially that one day things will get better. But I mean, I still went to school in Vegas, and from there, we made a transition. So I did not even end up sitting the common entrance in Vegas. I went,
Mhm.
I sat the common entrance in the non-school next to the Catholic church in Portsmouth. I believe
Mhm.
at that time it was under the leadership of Sister Rose, and I was in grade years. Well, or we had sort of grade seven. I think they had it in grade six, changed it a bit, and then we had two grade six at that time, and it was Miss Mitchell who was my class teacher, and I remember
Larry Mitchell.
I remember most
Yeah.
of my classmates making the transition, people like Shimana McLawrence and Benita and Becky Sir. And, we had a number of guys, even Teron Azil and um, Henderson Wenham. And so we had a number of individuals where I made a crossover. It is a new school. Probably it's about like 5 or 6 months away from the common entrance. And going through PSS as well with that particular crop. So at that time, you just have to continue to drive through life, and but I internalize it to a point where you almost become a man at that instance. You
Mhm.
don't really bank on failure as an option, and you have to continue to motivate yourself and be inspired. But most importantly, search for what is your purpose.
And that's what I wanted to, talk to you a little bit about. You, like, in speaking with you, you've always said, you've had to really dig deep within yourself because you knew what you wanted in life, and you were not going to let or allow that tragedy to keep you back, right? Since your mom's passing, the person who was part of who led to her death was arrested, convicted, went to prison, spent, I think he was sentenced to life, spent, it was over 20 years in prison, but that person was released. And I remember, I asked you, I said to you, how did you feel, when you heard that that person was going to be released? And you had something so powerful to say to me. You remember what you said to me?
Well, yeah, I believe, as I told you, for me in my stages in life, I've always received powerful dreams along the way, and I've gotten so far that I got a dream where, in order for me to shed more of the load, that forgiveness was part and parcel of the promise. So I could see ahead of my future, but in order for me to tap into that future, at each step, I had to sort of give in to something so that I could unlock more doors. And at that time, I believe I was at my first property that I bought in Ontario. And one of my classmates called me from Dominica. I got in touch with me. I believe it was Sabrina Seaman. So I knew her since primary school. And I believe she worked with some of the division down there that deals with that sort of department. And she told me, that's they would like sort of my speech on record in terms of the releasing and stuff. And at that time, my conscience was clear already. So I pretty much told her, well, he has a son outside, and it would be good at least if he could get in touch with his son as a dad, and if he can provide his son with whatever father figure or whatever relationship that they could inevitably cultivate. Because I mean, growing up with a dad as well, you don't know how he sort of process it. Everybody's sort of different, and at that stage, yeah, if he is willing to at least forge a relationship with his son, and see where life probably takes them, then that's good. But for me, in terms of forgiveness, I gave it with a very open heart. And um, it was over 20 years. Sometimes, this tragedy happened, but no sense in using that as a leverage for you not to overcome challenges. I more or less always use that as a fuel to continue to provide more self motivation, rather than to look at something that weigh me, or drags me down. So I'd already matured to a level where I knew what I had to do, and as soon as I forgave, so many doors opened for me. It's like you could tell that things unfold into steps, and it just manifests itself almost as if it's something that's difficult to explain, but the feeling of the universe when everything comes together, um it's a beautiful thing. And it's a beautiful thing because it's something that you have to work towards to reach a certain level to really see. um Elders in the village would say, if you live long enough, you will see. I mean, telling that if you live long enough, you'll see the stories to be able to tell the stories. And these are the sort of thing that we sort of banked on, that hey, as long as you have life, and as long as you continue to remain positive, and you continue to strengthen yourself, and not only that, but strengthen others, because that's what a society and relationship and even people is about. So it takes a deep understanding to ascertain whether or not you have reached that stage to be comfortable to freely forgive. And I've also, through my times, was a somebody in theology, and study a lot of the Bible. And in my time, Father Mopiti and Father Brendon, and your cousin Jerry and I would always be on the pulpit. Either he has the holy water and I have the incense, or vice versa, or I carrying the cross and leading the congregation. So I grew up within that aspect of the church as well. Even further learned on the Monsignor John Lewis in Roseau, and the Lordship Gabriel, our bishop. So I've learned a lot in that regard in religion. And I also have an aunt who is a nun. So allow me, Sister Lauren Rui. So it allowed me to pretty much tap into the compassion component, and look at different angles, and different, making logical decision, and things that are well thought out through. I would say all these things are attributes that continue to assist me to be able to forgive, and despite whatever harsh the circumstance may get, because we men, we die at an earlier age compared to women. If
Mhm.
you're a tall man and I'm over 6 foot, almost 6'5", it's like your heart has a longer way to, pump the blood through your body. And so you have to understand all these things, because tall men even die even earlier comparing with the statistics. So putting added pressure on your heart when it has to pump so much blood through your body through a long span, that you also have to look at your health and your circumstance. All these things do play and weigh into decision making, and completes you in whole, because you have to look at the impact it will eventually have on your life, the stressors that it may pose, and what best ways and best practices that you yourself can overcome. But it is indeed a personal decision, despite.
Mhm. Brandon, a lot of people on the line, they're like, I don't know if I could forgive. People are saying they don't know if they could do it. But you did it, and as you said that you've seen so much happen for you. Just letting that go, letting go that weight. It would have been a weight that would have probably drowned you, right? If you'd not let go of it. I want to kind of before we, because I wanted to get that out of the way, but you we talk about Canada, we talk about Dominica, but you didn't just hop over to Canada. It didn't just happen like that. So you complete high school in Dominica. Um, what happened after high school? Because you spoke about transitioning to PSS. What happens after high school for Brandon?
Well, after I completed high school, I mean, PSS, you get a very good education there as well. We would consider it a state of the art school in the northern territory of the country. And I also graduated there with about 6 ones. And I decided, I wanted to do agriculture. But it's not typical for students who graduate with so many ones to do agriculture. So
Mm.
even in my even in my communities, my farmers, I'm a prominent farmer which I will not mention name, and he told me, for a guy who have gotten so many subjects and degrees, why would you want to do agriculture in that regard? Because the farmers are poor. So you see, anybody who wants to do that, is almost like a dumbass in our local, in our local community.
Mm.
But I could understand where they're coming from, because they didn't see agriculture that the way that I saw it. And but agriculture came to me through what happened to my mom. You know,
Mm. Tell me a
on
little bit about that.
so understanding plants became my comfort. So right away, I knew that God drew me to my calling, because that was the way that I was able to get therapy. It's not to say Dominica is like it's not a high tech first world country where you get, state of the art counseling, or you have so many programs and different sort of that nature. So pretty much you have to understand your own situation. And as I said, you also have to be able to put water in your wine. So
Mhm.
in searching for what I'm good at, I found love in plants, and plants provided me that comfort. It's like I could speak to them, they could tell me how they felt, I could fix issues that they had, and it developed that sort of relationship. But most importantly, you get the sense of hard work, you get the sense of patience. At the end, you get the sense of accomplishment. But most essentially, I would say it provided a very humbling aspect, because you have to go through that journey in order for you to complete a harvest or a
Mhm.
success. And it provided me where it's almost like God felt that is where I'm gonna position you with what happened, and that's what you have to use to overcome that particular tragedy. And knowing that, I also had a very dream about a couple of years ago before the incident of my mom, and it showed me that I would be in a position with dealing with plants and dealing with um, changing the world with plants. And I'm like, I couldn't understand it. But when
Mhm.
I saw that my mom died and what I got comfort in, then I started to understand the dream. I started to see how I could cultivate that aspect of loving plants and plants is loving me back in that particular manner, to provide
Mhm.
me with therapy, to provide me with that what it makes me happy, and when something makes you happy, it doesn't feel like you're working hard at it. You don't really have to work extra hard at it, particularly if it's your calling and you understand it fully. It's almost like a gift, but you have to be able to unlock the different aspects of that gift. And I stuck at it, even tried building community farming programs with the young men from the Vegas community, and
Mhm.
later on went on to the Dominica State College, and I decided I'm gonna further develop that skill. And I did the agricultural program. We had Mr. Leslie, who is now the faculty dean of applied arts and technology, Mr.
Mhm.
Ron Leslie, and he was one of my guidance teacher there in teaching me multiple courses, and we all enjoyed that aspect of it, and we all loved the way that and the mannerism which he brought the topics to light. And we have Matthias, who was also still there. He was our practical teacher. Did a very good job. In between, we also had Basil, who also came and did agricultural practicals with us, and they were always impressed from the innovative ways that I would um, develop stuff to get the practicals going, and they felt, well, it's something that is uncommon, but it's something that I think about the aspect of agriculture differently. They could have seen that. And from there, when I completed, I think I taught at the Isaiah Thomas Secondary School. I was at probably, 19 or 20 by the time that I got enrolled at the school, and it was under Mr. Jerome Badwill at the time. And he expressed the need for an agricultural science teacher. And what I know, well, in St. Joe, and especially where they have the school, that the soil profile was so very shallow, because it's almost like a piece of kaya you want. But the
Mhm.
government, I believe, had fenced off probably about 40 or 20 plus acres at the above the school where they have the community project housing. And
Excuse me.
Mr. Badwill was a principal who really wanted to see agriculture thrive at the school, So I'm explaining to him how I would devise a program to help to get it successful. Because St. Joe, located there on the west coast, you have a lot of what I call good photon flux density and good photosynthetically active radiation taking place. And it's how are you going to harvest those photons and that energy from the sun and transfer that into food production. And the environment is very stable there. So I told him in order for that to be a successful program, we would have to bring in soil, and we it was probably costing us about $500 a dump a load, probably from where the excavation would be taking place at the time if they're cutting roads or doing something to bring it in, and to teach the students as well how agriculture you can look at it differently, because they were coming out from the Salisbury area, the Senju area, the Maru, Taru, Layu Valley, Layu Park, and historically has really been an agricultural sort of breadbasket for the country. And
Mhm.
they decided, through their support, they want to be part of the program fully. And, on Saturdays and Sundays, we would sort of go back there and I would show them how to build the soil, how to take that soil that we just got and to build it. There are times that we took field trips and we went all the way to dailies, you know, to get compost, and I think all petit savan, to gather compost and particularly from the bay leaf compost and bring back to the school. And that's a long way, and the guys, they were excited. Sometimes we would go there, bag probably over 300 bags of compost and try to head back to the school, and so they really understood the concept of how we're gonna build the soil. And then I would take them in the lab and show them that the soil that we have, how we test it and find out what sort of elements or nutrients that are also present that in there, so we can cultivate the aspect of building it properly and make sure that it provide the nourishment needed for the cultivation of crops. And but knowing that this venture would be expensive because you don't have the typical soil profile that you need, and you have to bring in the soil and whatnot. Instead of just complaining and saying we don't have this, we don't have that, I'd also look at creating proposal and see how we could get funding from non-profit organizations and different institutions, either regionally or internationally, and we gained success even in Canada, that sponsored a lot of our different projects that we would essentially help to develop at the school. So that was a plus, having individuals who recognize what we were doing and could also receive updates and see how we are transforming learning and agricultural development. So it sparked interest not only in the students, but even from when we would sell crops that I would call them back at the front of the assembly and give them at least 10%, 15% from the sale of whatever crops that they harvested and sold. So it gives them encouragement as a further incentive to continue the, but most importantly, to keep them off the streets on a weekend where they would have been probably idle and found themselves into trouble. So while the men, who obviously we had both men and women, but with the women, the women decided, you know what, so we would use that day for us to come on the weekends and show off our cooking skills to the guys. So the young ladies would come. They were in the food and nutrition program, and on the Saturdays they would cook food for the young men. Sometimes we would cater food, and sometimes there was also a lady, Miss Kala. She's living above the school, and she would always prepare on a Saturday, at least she'd prepare meals every time that we go there to share among the students who normally come to the program, and that was note in terms of worth noting, because when you see community members are also involved, because today we can sit down and say, I don't want to do this, and they will complain, and people complain at the government and this and that, and I was the sort of individual, if you have a problem, you be the change that you want to see, be the change you want to see, don't just sit and stay complaining all the time, because it's gonna bring you nowhere, and it's gonna get you nowhere. And even if you want people to follow you, but you're just talking, people just not gonna follow talk. People like to see action, and that's how you get people when in a movement. If you want to create something spectacular and get them to believe in whatever you're saying, then you have to be the change you want to see, and I was a very good person at that. And the students, they came every weekend. I couldn't say anything about them. They were the most set of troublesome students in the school, and the other teachers could not understand how that they're giving them so many trouble in their classes, and they would just gravitate towards Mr. Roberts and some of them would even skip other classes of the teachers, and I would to come on the farm. I would tell them, well, no, they have to stay in their classes to get their education in the different areas. But that's how motivated that they were, because not only that, they saw their own results. Their own results, and they saw what they're doing. It became exciting for them because they got to see and build it from the ground up and see the transformation aspect of it. So they were directly invested into the program, and could definitely put their best foot forward. I believe that year we also got a greenhouse donated by Fine Foods that cost over in the region of over $20,000. So they could have seen, well, you know what, the agricultural program could grow strength by strength. But then again, it takes a lot out of a teacher. You have to be strong-willed, as I say. You have to be the change that you want to see, because you're going to go there on the weekends. You're there after school hours. Tending to the farm and crops is very intensive labor. It takes a lot out of you. It drains a lot of your energy. And most times, the teacher's salary, if you have to travel back on school all over the weekends, it's not going to cover that. So, but I did it for the students because they gave me the hope, and they also gave me the courage that they wanted to see this stuff materialize at their school. So I always like to leave my mark where I go, and I believe in 2014, the school won its first agricultural award, I believe, in the history of the school, in competing against all the different other schools on the island, and was provided with recognition from the Ministry of Agriculture, as well as the Ministry of Education and Human Resource Development. So at the end, they could see, well, there is a reward in hard work, and so that motivated them and inspired them.
Brandon, I want to go to the live because a lot of people have been on the live. I don't want to leave them out at all. A lot of people, before I actually go, because I have like 2 screens now. Yes, I upgrade. I have 2 screens. So I want to talk. We have your Auntie Fanny, Charles, is watching. She's shouting you out. Natural Living is also shouting you out. Super proud of you. I have to big up the Vegas people who are on there, they're talking to each other, they're talking about each other, they're confirming things you're saying, like they're like your if you say anything that is a lie, right? So they're confirming every single thing. So I want to people like Shara. Shara is saying you're a magnet, Brandon. Roberts, always positive vibes. Samantha George is saying, my takeaway, be the change you want to see. So positive. So many takeaways, by the way. Like you've been given so many, social space sometimes, so many takeaways. I want to go up there, go up the line in terms of people who Beverly is saying, they love to hear you speak. Then we have Christine is saying, commending you on finding your safe space in plants. Misty Burnaby saying agriculture is the only thing that will endure after everything else is done. People will always need food and medicine. So she just shouting out and like reiterating what you're saying. A lot of folks are on the live and really bigging you up and shouting you out. I want to get to how you got to Canada, but before we do that, I want to take a short break because you've been talking quite a bit, and I want you to, if you want to grab some water, take a short break, just to pay some bills, and we'll come back. When we come back, we're going to talk about how the hell you get to Canada. Like, how does Brandon get to Canada? So we're coming back right after this.
Welcome to Bloombox.
so we're back. Just waiting for Brandon to join us again. So we're back right here. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you so very much for staying tuned. We're back here. Exclusive interview with the master grower himself, Brandon Roberts from the Itasi City, right in the house. Brandon, you Canada. How did you end up in Canada? I know the story is packed. There are a lot of layers to the story, and I want to start from why did you decide that Guelph University was the university, and tell us about the process to get into university at Guelph.
Well, I heard about Guelph through one of my mentors that I had on the island at the time, Mr. Camille David. He came out with a PhD from Boston, Massachusetts, and he also saw the skill set that I had in agriculture, and with him being passionate about education himself, he also searched and found that Guelph was the best university up there if I really wanted to attend. Um, at that time myself, I also spun a globe and my hand landed on Canada. And I find that very interesting. So I decided, you know what, I would also seek and see how that I could have attended the university there. But when I look at the prices for the international students that to attend the university, there was astronomical. I also knew as well that the former Prime Minister, Rosie Douglas from the Portsmouth area, he also attended the school in the early 1960s. So his dad at the time was a wealthy coconut farmer, and he decided that he wanted to send him to Canada to get an agricultural degree, and he chose Guelph as one of the prestigious schools that he should have attended. So Guelph really sparked my interest daily, and I'm trying to see, well, if they are that good in agriculture, then let me see how that I can get to attend the university. However, I had a lot of challenges because as an international student and you've seen the fees that you have to get to attend the school, I applied to the school about 3 times. I got accepted all 3 times. However, I had a little bit of difficulties with my grandmother at the time. I guess she probably was embarrassed to tell me that she had used the deed of the property as collateral for a few previous loans, and probably she was embarrassed to tell me. So the first 2 occasions I did not get to attend the school, and I mean applying to the school was probably, I would say, almost half my paycheck. But I mean I'm interested in attending the school, and it was my vision to attend the school. So when she decided that she really wanted to tell me what was really going on, and then she told me, then I figured a way how to relieve her of those debts, and sort of put the debts onto my name and onto myself. At the very same time, I believe out of 1/4 of the cost, the government tell me, well, they can cover 1/4. But the prime minister knew that I was a talented guy, so whatever he can give, I told him if he can give a drop in the bucket, I will turn that into a many amount. So I decided when everything fall into place, I decided that that was the time to really leave the island, because I had amassed the maximum allowable at the aid bank at the time, and could use the deed of the property as collateral, and do some transfers, and make sure that all the burden was placed on myself. But when I left the island, I mean, I just had still 1/4 of the monies. 3/4 of the monies, you still have to come up with it. And then when I got to Canada, I landed in Canada. But I also had friends in Canada who also seek donation in the name of Marie Rina, who assisted with the farming project and stuff. And when I told them that I was coming to Canada, I mean, I believe, in Barbados. They told me that, she would want to come and see me and pick me up at the airport. So I landed in Toronto, and she asked her husband to build me a room in one of their cabins on the lake. And, so I went there for a few days in the newly built room that her husband prepared for me. And at that time, it was 4 hours away to Guelph from the Quafford Lake area, and Lindsay, almost around Peterborough area in Ontario. And even from Toronto to Guelph have been a solid 2.5 hours, almost 3 hours. So they decided to drive me at Guelph, and I found a place, and me knowing that I'm free forth short of my education monies that I need, I have to work extra hard. And but not only that, even the as an international student, you could only work up to 20 hours a week. So I would maximize that 20 hours a week. And I only also understood that my education was my strength. I could whistle my way through school very easily. So when I noticed that the rate for one semester at the school, I could double my course load and end up doing almost 2.5 semesters in one semester. I mean, it's a lot of stress, and it's a lot of you put yourself under, particularly if you're working 20 hours a week still. But I know for me to succeed that I had to do it. And I end up writing to the academic review committee, and they told me, well, they don't allow students to do that sort of thing at the school because students complain with mental health, and we had previously had about 5 deaths at the university for suicide. And so I had to allow them to look at my grades and write a letter to let them know that I'm the one sort of financing my own education, pretty much. And for me, they tell me, well, we don't want you to commit suicide. And I told them my story, and I told them about my mom and my parents, and I told them if I had to commit suicide, I would have done it long time ago. And so they granted me permission through a letter. So I had that written response from them, and they could allow the registrar to maximize my courses and sort of do the impossible by taking on almost 2.5 semesters in one semester. Yet alone students cannot. They struggle with one semester, and you're doing 2.5 in one. So you cram in so much in so much short space of time, and then I still had up to 20 hours a week to work. So, but I mean, I was a high school teacher. I know concepts that drill theory to stick in my head. So my room was like I would say like a classroom. I lie down on my bed, and there's charts all in the ceiling, because it helps with the memory. You're seeing it over and over again. And I would prepare new charts. I would prepare my work at least 2 to 3 weeks in advance before the deadline. I would also even send it to the professors and get back further feedback from them. So if I know I'm sending it and they think it's already a B plus, I know from the time I take their suggestion, I work it into probably an A plus. And so I did that ahead of time, and I tried to stay the schedule. And I still found time for partying and going out and meeting girls and meeting women and enjoying the university, embracing it to the food. But you have to know what you do, and that becomes important.
Wow. So Brendon, you completed. How long did it take you to complete your 4-year degree? I should say. How long?
I did it about in a year and 2 months.
Remarkable.
When the university saw that, they offered me for me to come and do a master's, and promised me a PhD out in the province of British Columbia. Um, but at that time, seeing that all the struggle that I went on, I tried my best to see if I could raise the money, and I came to even the bank that I took the loan from, and they told me that no, they cannot give me any extension from the loan, and so I just forgot about um, doing any further studies. And but I knew from just that start alone, I had amassed what I needed already to become successful. I wasn't really
Mm-hmm.
a firm believer that you needed a PhD to become successful. So I always felt, well, from the time that I walked out from the school, um, it was possible, very possible, that I could be way more successful than the PhDs who even taught me at the school. It's
Mm-hmm.
just how you're going to transfer and apply the various methodologies and cope in a country that I mean that you have never really been there before. So you know how
Mm-hmm.
to and face it from transferring that knowledge into practical application or pragmatic approaches. And I decided, seeing that I wasn't successful in coming up with the funding, even if it was partially, but you're still an international student, so you're still slapped with a fair amount of the cost. And
Mm-hmm.
just to see what hoops that I had jumped through, when I spoke to my grandmother at the time, um, I could hear it in her voice that she was not gonna last too long, So
Mm-hmm.
what I did, I put my last dollar that I had, I bought a ticket and I came down to Dominica to see her because I knew, based on how she was speaking to me, that inside I could feel it. It's something that you could just sense. And when I came down, and just to bring her a picture of my graduation, because I mean, I have nobody to attend, I have nobody to to support. It's me alone on the journey. So I wanted her to see at least a picture of me at the time um, graduating. And when she saw that I did it in so much of a record time, that she decided, she even shed tears. At that time, her blood was coming out in her eyes. So she felt very ill, and she told me that she's so sorry that she held back my progress for so many years. And I told her, don't really worry about it, because at that time I knew what I was about. I just wanted her to come to grips with it. And she fell on my right shoulder, and started to cry. And she told me that you were very blessed, and doesn't matter what you do in your life, you're going to become extremely successful at it. And so I just knew that for her to feel complete in her heart, that I really had to sort of come and do that, and one of her concerns was, I mean, my brother was there with her all the time, and she felt, well, she's pretty much going to die, but she can see, well, something very troubling is going to become of him. And actually explained that she would be there for weeks, asking him to go and call the nurse and to attend to her, and because she was high blood pressure and sugar, and a host of issues that exacerbated for losing a lot of children very early, and what have you not. So she felt that she was there feeling ill for weeks, and he would not go and call the nurse, which is Nurse Stella, probably 4 to 10 steps away from the house. Lawi there, and she also felt, well, um, he doesn't want to do anything. She grew him and raised him so sheltered that I don't think he probably ever washed his clothes or cook a meal for himself, or I would even say wash a plate. She, despite her illness, she still really did everything in the home. So I don't think he never really came to in his own self-awareness. And when I spoke to him of the concerns that our grandmother had at the time, he basically told me that, Granny, she's somebody who likes to worry a lot, and he told me he knows what he is about, and um, he pretty much has himself covered in what he is about. So when somebody gives you that sort of response, is not nothing much that you can tell them that, well, time will tell. But at that time, at least I know, well, she died happy knowing that I came back to see her. And because I knew if I had spent all the time in the university, I would not have, it would be getting the degree, and she would not have been able to see that moment, for one.
Mm-hmm.
I could connect with how she was feeling at the time. With she's you could, you could sense that the death was very near. And as soon as I left the island, we got hit by Hurricane Maria, probably one of the worst hurricanes in our lifetime. And she didn't survive the stress of the hurricane. A couple months probably later, she died eventually. So
But Brandon, you talk about your grandmother, and the fact that she played such a major role in your upbringing, and then you get into university because she had to allow you to use, her land paper and all of these things. But I mean, people will say like this has to be planned, but it isn't, because we planned this show weeks ago, and then just recently, like a couple days ago, like just recently, the home that you grew up in was burnt. Like your brother caught that house where your grandmother raised you guys, caught it on fire. I mean, how did that make you feel in that moment, knowing that, she did so much for you guys, even for him, and yes, he's been a nuisance, not only to your family but to the community, but where your grandmother raised you, what was burnt down. Like you saw it on Emo News, like how does that make you feel?
well, God has always provided me with signs, and when I woke up that morning, I believe it was Monday, this past
Couple
Monday.
days ago. Monday gone.
Yeah, Monday gone. And when I woke up, I came across my last photo that I had at the university at the time, when I did the degree and studying at the library when I was going to sit my final exam. So I knew that that was the last exam before they confer the degree on myself. And I'm inspiring, a child within the, or student, or somebody within the business community, on LinkedIn, whether North America or Europe. That's where majority of the people who follow me sort of come from. And telling them about the story, and in the same light, I'm telling them about the story. Um, Probably after 20 minutes that I've posted the story, I got a call from my aunt in Dominica, who's also one of the surviving children of my grandmother. And, she told me she heard that the brother caught the house on fire. And I just chuckled the same way that you're seeing right now, because, it's like God just showed me the sign that, while you're inspiring somebody at the same time, and whatever your grandmother had to do at the time, that paradigm has now been completed. And yeah, I just decided, what, the boy was already sort of mentally ill before that he started going on hard drugs. Because as I said, my grandmother pretty much saw it on her dying days, and she knew the way that she grew him up, so privileged and so sheltered that, she self was concerned. And she even told him, I believe at that instance, that when she died, he has to come looking for her. And so said, so done. So for me, I've tried many a times to assist the young man. I even remember while I was at the university, and still, just graduated, and sending monies. Well, still at the university, my grandmom called me and told me she would like some monies to help pay his CXC. And I sent whatever I could, and stayed hungry for days just to assist him. And he never went and do the CXC, and he allowed her to pay for the subjects. So from that, that was almost like strike one. And when I asked him why he didn't go and do the CXC, he told me he didn't do the SBAs. So he wasn't really interested in school. So for one, it's okay if you're not interested in school, but then if you're interested in a skills or trade, then that's okay too. So we still said we'll see how we could help him. So while I'm overseas, I'm also sending him monies as well. And coming to the realization, I send a few thousands of dollars for him to pay my student loan. And he used to do it very well, and almost sent me a receipt right away. And um, there just come a particular time that I just didn't hear from him. And the weekend they told me he's acting a fool in the community, screaming or shouting, or even went on the grave and asking for his grandmother, the same thing that his grandmother told him. Um, at that time, I'm saying, but I just sent monies for him. What is really going on? So it just hit me that I knew right away that he was on hard drugs, because I wanted to always test the relationship we had by me providing for him and making sure that he's well taken care of. That from the time that something went wrong, I wanted the first person to know. And I knew that because he never contacted me since he received the money. And a lot of people within the community is telling me what he is doing. So I knew, well, he had a probably have a serious problem. And then when I connect with people that I knew that he would connect with, like a Peace Corps, Miss Valerie, who used to be part of the community, she also told me she was sending monies for him. Um, his godmother, who is in New York, she also told me she was sending monies for him. His sister, who we have in France, she also told me she was sending monies for him. So the guy would probably on a monthly basis, I would say, have over $3,000, and he probably has little to no bills to pay, and he probably taking his drugs and forming the fool. And from that, I say, you know what? I think that he's locked himself into a very difficult situation. But we still try, regardless, to assist him as a family. I told my sister decided, okay, we'll take him to France. I got even tickets I was getting for he and my aunt to go to France. And all he had to do was to go and get a COVID test at the hospital. They drove, my aunt, who is Valdemar Hosford, and Sister Lauren Rouye, our nun. They drove to the to collect him and bring him to Roseau to get the COVID test. And before they even parked in the parking lot, he escaped from the vehicle. So he never really went to get the test or seek further help. We say, okay, as a family, we're still not washing our hands on him. Um, we also bring him by Monsignor John Lewis, Father John Lewis in Roseau, next to the cathedral, to spend a few months with Father John Lewis. See if Father John Lewis could not even transform him. Even myself, with Father John, knowing my relationship with Father John Lewis, I mean, I could go at the place there anytime. It's like my home. I could go and sort of, I had a room there if I choose to stay in Roseau, And so Father John has also explained to him that, Brendon, he knows Brendon very well, and, they're trying to help him as well. And it comes to a point where he always relapses, and he doesn't really want to take in the help, where he went back to Vegas permanently. And we've noticed the destruction very early on, that I told them that, the properties are not safe, and even the community is not so safe, in the way that he will behave. And so said, so done. Many over the years, it's deteriorated and gotten worse without being able to take the help. Even other people from the community, his good friend Ronell tried to assist and see if they would not have gotten him some form of recovery and support. Miss Magdalene, he had another friend named Kirby. Her mom also assisted him in that regard. And all the stories came back to the same thing, since what his grandmother was saying before she died and before he was even on drugs. Mamak, our neighbor, and Cheryl, they would have also tried to assist him. And Vegas is a community, they'll still bring food for you and stuff. Nurse Stella, Lawi there. Everybody would try to assist the young man, but to avail, no avail. We never saw that he is taking on or biting on any of the assistance that is afforded to him from his immediate family and even the community members and even outsiders, so it's come a point where we had to ask the law enforcement to see if we cannot allow him to serve at least 8 months to a year in prison, where he can see he's also getting punished for the acts that he's committing, because he destroyed the windows in the house many a times, and many a times that I replaced them. So we try to see from law enforcement, but they're saying, well, they cannot take him for any of those charges and stuff. Even one of the magistrates said, told our family members, don't tell them how to run their court, you know. So based on the legal system, we felt so entrapped that there is nothing that can be done, even to provide him with a forced reset, where probably he's in the cell and cannot get access to the drugs that will sort of provide him that forced reset he didn't really want to do on his own, and seeing from there on whether or not we can further help with whatever rehabilitation process from the forced reset. But we cannot force the authorities that seeing that. But it comes to a point, if we have to go back in our sort of village dialect, nous te que dit attends ça là, il vient contre potence.
But Brandon, do you think a huge part of it is he's probably carrying something of, because remember that was his father that 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 killed his mother, you know. Do you think that he might be carrying some of that, with him, and not never even being rehabilitated or even getting any therapy from that? He was a baby, yes, but the stigma, and you've dealt with it differently, in the sense of you use plants as comfort, and what your grandmother did was that she tried to protect him by giving him everything so that he did not feel that there was ever going to be a void. But the big elephant in the room is that my dad killed my mom. And that could have also played a huge part in who he's turned out to be today. I mean, yeah, we say it's he's turned to drugs and there's a lot going on, and I mean, he recently caught your house, your family home on fire, and burned the house, and I mean, that must be heartbreaking for you guys. But do you think it goes deeper than just drugs?
Well, as I told you, he was already ill before the drugs era. The drugs is just something that amplifies the illness. And he's probably seen a lot of things that, in the way that he treated the grandmother in the last stage of her life. I believe I even got a dream where he saw her, pretty much dying, and didn't even bother with her, and based on what she told me when I went down, that dream is plenty
Was
things
a
about
reality.
plenty things about it tells me that it came to pass, because probably in the last 2 days of her life, she's probably asking him to go to get the nurse because she was already severely ill. And he's somebody, based on how he was already behaving, he would have watched her died and not go and call the nurse. And after she died, probably that's when he went and called the nurse. So whatever, and I also noticed that through the way that he set the fire in the home. I mean, I wasn't there. I'm not an arson forensic expert, but from the wing of the house that he set the fire was where he was residing, pretty much where his bedroom was, and he didn't touch the bedroom of his grandmother. You know, he left that bedroom totally
Untouched.
untouched. So it further confirmed to me that whatever he did to his grandmother in the last days, he's most likely seeing it and feeling it, particularly when he takes his drugs, or when he consume them. But then again, as I say, we don't know how he processed his father killing his mother. He was just 11 months old at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But with being 11 months old at the time, I mean, more of the brunt would have fallen myself and my sister. It happened on my sister's birthday. Women are more emotional, and she still held her head steady today, and never really gave any sort of disastrous problems to the family. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, to put it in context, he's a 26-year-old man. His mother died at 27. She had about going on her third child at that age. At his age, I already had over half a decade as a teacher and also traveled to a first world country where I have no friends, no family, nobody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't even think that his father was that old when he killed his mother. His father probably 3 years younger than the mother herself.
I remember he was younger than her, but again, too, Brandon, people process things differently, eh? And people you might think, because I know, like speaking, because I've lost too, just like you, and I know how I dealt with it, and I've seen how my sisters have dealt with it. Like we've all dealt with it completely differently, right? Some people, they will use in death. They can be motivated to continue, and some people fall apart. And some people fall apart, but they fall apart just on the inside, like they're crumbling on the inside, and you see them walking around with a smile, but they're crumbling. And then also what society has to say, society might secretly make little snark remarks about you know his mom, and he never knew her. He never knew her, and by the looks of things, he was never able to develop that relationship with her or his father. And I think we should still treat him with a level of grace and hope. I know you feel that he's all hope is lost, but I want to just encourage.
You know what? As I said, even you have those sort of valid points, but that still
Mhm,
doesn't tell you. You eat a plate, wash your plate. You wake up, make your bed. Your clothes dirty, wash your clothes. These are basic elements of human existence.
mhm,
And when you pretty much you don't want to do any of these things, which are very basic, it's like you almost make yourself unhelpable. you
mhm,
know so you create a situation for yourself where, yeah, you could be going through something, but nobody not telling you, well, if you're not if your plate is dirty, to wash it. If your
mhm,
plate is dirty, to wash it. Nobody can help you with that. If you defecate in a toilet, to flush it. Nobody can help you. These are just basic etiquettes. And when you no longer can follow these sort of basic etiquettes, it provide that the mind has been what we would call effim, the l'esprit, effim,
mhm,
and that too would be combined with sort of I would say wickedness as well,
mhm.
because whatever he did to the grandmother as well in the final days,
It's
if
come back to haunt him.
it's also amplifying and
Mhm,
see certain things, then yeah, definitely, even whether you process things differently, but these are just basic things, and if you're not doing the basic, you no longer want to live as a human being. um,
mhm,
um, Nobody nowhere part of the world is going to tell a big 26-year-old man to do very basic such stuff when you should be functioning as an adult.
Let's move away from Jason a little bit. I still want to know, how did you feel about the house being burnt? Like, you still have not told me.
As I
You've
told you,
you
I felt no way. Chez si on check is easy. Like my heart is a heart that is very much hardened, and I don't really cry. It takes a lot to get me to that position. Not even my grandmother that would even get me to cry. I believe the only person that would get me to cry would be more or less my great grandmother, Majunas. She more or less
Mm-hmm.
bulked more of the bulk of the sort of nurturing in my upbringing. So
Mm-hmm.
for her, I would have a little bit of empathy. But
Mm-hmm.
um, looking at the situation and looking at everything, I don't feel sorry. I would feel I'm feeling more sorry for the community because it's almost like I know that it's developing to almost a menace in the community. In my perspective, looking at the entire story and how things unravel, I'm seeing it as a curse. You know, I'm not seeing it as where he himself, as I told you, we've provided a plethora of opportunities, and he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't want to do the very basic stuff, which obviously says that you don't want to leave. You don't want to go on with any form of encouragement that there is hope, and we've tried to provide hope on many occasions, and whether or not, for example, you have not held a job, you didn't want to do your education. So you didn't want to do your education, you have not held a job. It's almost impossible. If even if I wanted to sponsor you, it's almost isn't possible to even get you across the Canadian border with um the laws and the legislation. So
Mm-hmm.
you have permanently almost encapsulate yourself where you become your own destruction unto your own self without taking heed. So he has always been provided with hope. He has always been provided with the house is materialistic. It can be replaced. You
Mm-hmm.
know, but he committing for me a problem in the community where the village could be asleep and he could decide to go on a rampage and do a multiple massacre
And
within
I've
the
heard, and I've heard people have had those fears. People have
within
expressed those
within,
fears.
within the community, and that is why I'm seeing where at that stage I don't know. Well, now that he burned the house, might be something greater to see if the authorities cannot keep him behind bars, because I would definitely press charges to keep him behind bars the full length of time that he can be kept behind bars. As I told you, his body might need a forced reset, and
Mm-hmm.
having a forced reset is something that aids and abet in um, the strategy moving forward, whether he can even come
A
back to,
purge.
yeah, he can
He needs a
come back
purge.
having some form of sense to get to the rehabilitation stage, if that is even possible, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But at that stage, yeah, we've exhausted the different avenues, and he
I
was
want.
we've also with that case in point. He's the person who resided in the home the longest in everybody in the family.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's like
He's done it to himself.
he's done it to himself. He
He's
lived there
done it
more
to
than the
himself.
grandmother. I haven't stayed in the house about 14 going on 15 years. I was more or less residing out in the Mahu community in Mount Georgian.
Mhm.
Uh, so it has been over 15 years I have not resided in the home. My sister probably have over 20 plus years she never resided in the home. His grandmother died almost 5 years ago, and they probably entered the house at the same time together. You know,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
he's the longest surviving individual within the family who have lived there the longest, and based on the reports, yeah, it's just not very good.
I want to switch things up. I want to switch things up a bit. I want to talk because you've been doing such amazing things in Canada. You know, you are what they call a master grower, and I want you to explain to us what exactly is a master grower, and like even some of the terms you use. Sometimes I'm just like, what is Brandon talking about? You know, you've gone on to work with many different corporations and organizations. You've established businesses and nonprofits and all of these things, but tell us a little bit about what your work. entails, like what, because your work is exciting. Like if people follow you on LinkedIn, like I follow you on LinkedIn and I'm always sharing your stuff. And if you guys notice, the flyer, he had like a, like it's almost like a bouquet of ganja, a ganja bouquet, a big ganja bouquet, of properly, what is called buds. But you're a master grower. Tell us a bit about how you got to there, and about your job, what you do.
Well, I did the timing of with the education in coming to Canada because I also followed geopolitical news, and Canada was one of the first countries that was making statements of going legalization statewide within cannabis. So I knew, as I told you, I had my eyes on it for quite some time. And once I completed the education, um, it came 1 year before they fully legalized. So I went up in the sort of northwestern Ontario territory, and growing millions of trees for to assist with the Canadian forest renewal programs there. Um, Managing about a 300,000 square foot facility. So it assisted in, a lot of lumber harvesting is happening in that part of Canada, to help with paper, toilet paper, pulp, lumber for homes, softwood. And so I was growing a number of the plants you call the white spruce, black spruce, larch, white pine, jack pine, majority of the trees that we normally use for lumber to build homes, um, and stayed there about until the cannabis industry got legalized in 2000 and I believe 18 there, yeah,
Yeah,
18
17.
there
Yeah.
it came about.
Mhm.
17, 18 there it came about. And the good thing about me is that, because of the education background, and managing big projects, a lot of headhunters would always normally contact me and ask me, within North America, where would I like to go within the country, within the continent. And I had the pickings of all the best jobs in the continent, and I could choose, out of the lot, where I would like to go, and how much I would like to get paid for this job. So it provided me with a very unique pool that, they know that they have a seasoned expert in the country. When in compare within the database of other applicants, they know, well, he's very strong among the top best that they have on the continent.
Mhm.
So they would also offer me, these sort of jobs, and I first went down to the Atlantic region, and working out of two different provinces. So I've been a master grower for many different companies. I've almost probably 4 or 5 companies so far in total within the country. That's why normally you'll hear, they say, well, you normally work across the country, right through the country, with major leading roles within, corporate Canada, and
Mhm.
in part of the minority class, meaning that a person of color. These
Mhm.
things don't normally happen, and even for the Caucasians, it will take them up to probably their whole career, up to probably 40 years, to be able to be so, valuable in different parts of the society where they can, have authority over where they want to go, or choose to go, and accessing the best jobs in the country. So, but for me, I could summarize it for them in a span of about 5 years, because I knew what I wanted already, and it provided me the opportunity to create a roadmap, within the corporate Canada, and where the jobs are. And at that time, cannabis was a big bubble, and billions of dollars, pouring into the industry. Sometimes I remember I communicated with you, and I told you I'm in the Atlantic region.
Mhm.
By the next time you spoke with me,
You in
probably
a different place.
different place, So it's like, even I tell people, even my home, I haven't been there for the years yet. Out of the last 4 years, I've been only there probably about 3 times at my own residence. And I have not. Sometimes I just go back just to give the house a little air.
Yeah.
Us Dominicans, that's part of the culture. But
Mhm.
I can monitor everything remotely, from the conditions to temperature to security and what have you not. And I have people who will go there and help with the snow removal, and make sure that certain areas of the property that I want taken care of is done. But within master growing under the Canadian law, majority of the companies as a licensed producer require a master grower. So yeah, all over the country you hear master, 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 master. I don't really like considering myself sort of master, but under the
But you're like probably you probably don't want to say, but you're probably the number one
yes, I would say
in Canada.
I'll be I'll be right up there with establish. I know how to establish my authority when I
Mhm.
have studied the market and know where I align compared to everybody else. Even my prospective clients, before I speak to them, they know about me. We
Mhm.
have also a young man from Penville, Kelton Daru, is doing a program in Nova Scotia, and he just happened to tell his organic professor if he knows Brendon, and he tell him, of course we know Brendon. I regularly invite Brendon to conferences, symposias, workshops, panel discussions, and so he was even amazed that don't matter through the agricultural sector, different areas you go and you call my name and they're telling him, well, of course we know Brendon. So it from early on it was very easy for me to establish my authority and amassing experience working on large scale projects, working on both indoor and outdoor cannabis production. Um, so it offered me that plethora of choices, from
Mhm.
doing indoor, doing outdoor, networking with a broad spectrum of investors right throughout the country, and accessing the best corporate positions within corporate Canada, um,
Mhm.
because it amassed through the experience as well, through over time, and understanding how communities function, and through the education from the university, understanding how to deal with a society that has a multicultural, cross broad spectrum of individuals from all different races and walks of life, and how to communicate effectively within those leadership roles, to allow me to sort of gain success from the gate, and
Mhm.
I always tell
I mean, kudos to you. I always tell you how proud I am of you, and a lot of folks are saying, how proud they are of you because you've really done wonders for yourself. And I mean, like, if you guys don't follow Brandon, go follow him on LinkedIn because I think that's the only social media that he's really hot on. So he will post regularly on LinkedIn, because has a business mind. So everything and you'll see like he has thousands of followers that are not just interested in his content but interested in wanting to know more. They're like, tell us more, Brandon. Like, how do I get this? And they put their 2 cents and they're waiting for him to respond back. And people from all over the world, Australia, I see people from New Zealand, all over the world, comment under your pictures or your pieces. But in addition to that, you're writing books, like you're writing books, tell us a little bit about the books. And I also want to kind of keep that in the back of your mind too, because I want to talk a little bit about how can that, or how would you be able to translate this, your wealth of knowledge, to the Caribbean? Because I feel like the Caribbean just last kakarats in catching wind of this cannabis movement, because it seems like it's leaving, because it's not as hot as it was in Canada, because everything is just drifting elsewhere. And the Caribbean, Dominica, because we could talk because we're from Dominica, everywhere just seems to be stagnant, where they're not understanding that they need to take up that mantle. The I don't know if if we're still reluctant in the care. I don't know what it is. You could probably give me a little bit more insight as to what you think it is, and incorporate that with, your books, and what you the literature that you're producing and why you're producing it.
Well, when I surveyed the industry, and being one of the, I would say, the first from the university to work right across the industry, all across the country, it would be almost inevitable that they expect me to do more in-depth sort of outreach to the public as to my findings, and ways on which we can further look at the future direction of the industry. And it's one critical component. That's why I chose myself even to come and help First Nations communities across the country as well, because at the time when working through corporate Canada, there are no black-owned corporate Canada businesses. There is very little indigenous corporate Canada businesses within cannabis. It was basically 100% Caucasian-based ownership, and it takes lots of money, hundreds of millions and billions, to pour into the cannabis industry. Canada, ourselves here, we have lost billions into the cannabis industry. So in the starting, it's important to understand the nature of these projects. And I mean, yes, in the Caribbean region, when we look at how cannabis, the act came into the 1937, where we had the Marijuana Act in the United States of America, that pretty much unleashed the war on drugs, and therefore it came about out of social control, and both political and further economic control over people of color, because they notice, even though predominantly they were catching a lot of people of color like blacks and Hispanics within their society with cannabis, the Caucasians also use cannabis as equally in terms of numbers. But it was an easy target because they know, well, we associated with something that they can further curtail and form of social control. So we at the Caribbean region, I mean, coming out from former slave colonies, we also depend on the traffic of the globalized civilization to help to prop up our economies, whether through tourism, whether through different areas of growth and development. So we don't have a choice but to participate once the superpowers has unleashed their war on drugs. That we also cannabis is also going to get affected within that spectrum of the Caribbean region, because they know people of color are the ones who are trafficking it probably the most, the ones who are normally using it at high rates, even if their society should that they equally used it as well, but they would get either less jail time or no jail time. And you have the growth of the prison, where more than 80% of the population in the prison are from black people and Hispanic people and probably indigenous people, making a percentage of that. But however, in terms of the culprits for having gotten into scotch free and serving less jail time, you have on the counterparts, when you look at the different spectrum, the other groups are not serving as majority of jail time as black people. So you have the prisons being more heavily populated with our members, and that further cripples our society, because children are growing up without fathers. Little offenses, you can, for a joint or so, you could take up to, back in the days, a very lengthy time in prison. I've heard of people who spent over 20 years for one gram of weed. And it provided instances where they are not even represented within the legal cannabis industry. Less than 2% of them are actually probably business owners within the entire North American landscape, where majority of them were getting convicted at highest rates. So coming to talk about social equity. So when I saw what was happening within the industry, I also took a pause to see how I can also assist communities of color assist First Nation communities and other minority groups, even Caucasian minority communities, because they are also affected by that sort of situation as well, underrepresented groups, and in helping to cultivate and build a path forward to assist them where they can have thriving projects where cannabis and plant medicine, psychedelics as well is concerned, to allow them to create a more equitable society and address the gaping the disparities that occur within the industry where now you have a big unbalance. And that's why I rise. And at the time when I heard from the Williams First Nation community, I was in Toronto actually when I heard from them. Um, at Toronto, we were setting up some of the what we call the urban structure for urban farming within the city or in close proximity to the city limits, because Canada was importing so many of our greens and herbs from California, and we wanted to know how can we help to reduce and have more vertical leafy greens and vegetables grown also in the indoors to feed the population of Toronto, which is ever growing up to probably right now close to 11 to 12 million. So visiting a lot of these facilities that have worked with numerous individuals, even PhDs alike, and but they were still having so many issues that normally they would call me in because they know that I have seen a broad spectrum of facilities right throughout the country, and how different region affects and provides different challenges. So the same challenges that I would experience in Western Canada would be different from Eastern Canada, would be different from the Midwest, because most of them are different altitudes.
Mm-hmm.
You have different winters, you have different pressures, you have different aspects of the summers. So it to really understand the microclimatic conditions and engineering, designing buildings that can suit the different purpose, so that you have at least premium product, whether you grow in vegetables inside for leafy greens or cannabis. It has to be done in a way where it can support long-term sustainability and looking at and different factors. Also in terms of, as you mentioned, books and stuff, in getting to the account of what took place within the country and where we can grow, looking at the historical context, looking at women in cannabis development, because when we look at big data in development, women has always played a formidable role in the development of many countries, including the power first superpower countries of the world, where they are actively in the labor force,
Mm-hmm.
and also helping to stimulate the gross national product as well as the gross domestic product. So, but in the cannabis industry, you have a very small percentage of women, and that's why you see normally I carry my in terms of being active on LinkedIn as becoming almost like a modern extensionist to aid and abet different perspectives, so that areas where women can excel, looking at areas of gender inclusivity in development of cannabis and horticulture, looking at minority communities, looking at environmental stewardship and economic development, looking at various sectors like cannabis sovereignty and equity programs and cannabis tourism, and how those impact nations, how they impact the development, because everywhere you go have its own historical perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not the same. So the same models in Canada wouldn't work in the Caribbean region. However, with cannabis, the quality has to be almost on the same page in order to secure markets from either the EU, European Union, or different areas where that needs the product in high quantities, but at least high quality. If you don't have quality, it's not going to sell. And Canada, you have a population roughly closing in on 40 million. Out of that targeted demographic, how many consumers of cannabis that you have? Probably less than 4 million, and therefore you have a surplus within the market, and you expect now demand is almost has dropped because it's almost 5 years that we're into legal cannabis, and you get in new price equilibriums, and these price equilibriums also allow, um, because you have an influx of producers within the license framework under the government. So it's not like we have areas like the US where certain areas are capped and you only allow a certain amount of producers, so it sort of balances off. So a lot of people, Canadians, invested billions of dollars in the industry, and it still provide opportunities for export into the European Union and other areas of interest, like even when Southeast Asia, has recently over the last year came on board in terms of legalization, and they also have a huge market down there as well for high quality or premium cannabis products. So in a nutshell, I would definitely say that our region, yes, I mean, we're taking our very time, and we know that they consider us almost in their institutions, we almost like what we call the global south, or they sometimes refer to us as the third border, because it's almost like after the development hit elsewhere, that's when it hits, the global south, so to speak. And sometimes that's not always necessarily a bad thing, because we have to allow countries to grow on their own, and the sovereignty in each state decides how that they would like to move as a people, and their legislation and laws that they would like to enact. But we still have global leaders within the Caribbean region that has still taken on their own in countries like St. Vincent. We also have cannabis is sort of legalized there as well. I have Canadian investors that also operate on the island, that from the Kamloops area, like 3 hours from where I'm at right now in the Pacific. Even Jamaica has always been well known, and has also jumped on board the bandwagon, and has probably leading the Caribbean in terms of research and development, where cannabis is concerned, and majority of those gains that they have built on can get further passed on into the Caribbean. But as you mentioned, even our island, Dominica, because of our strategic location to the archipelago islands, both north and south of the region, provides perfect opportunity for trade and commerce, and regional integration, where sort of probably cannabis is concerned. As long as we can provide the value that these other countries and neighbors would be looking for. And we also had in the early days of the drug trade going to the French territories, neighboring Guadeloupe, Martinique, where a lot of young men has lost their lives, frankly, in the cannabis trade and the drug trade. So if you have regulated markets, not only that we can curtail illegal drug trafficking within the Caribbean, but provide it as a further base for governments to amass tax revenue, and make it into a product. But as long as we're providing a good product that these other nations definitely want, and now that we have a lot of the hotels on islands, they can also be equipped with dispensaries. This also further assists with cannabis tourism that people are normally looking for, almost at a 28 to 30% percentile of the population in North America looking for favorable cannabis destinations. And cannabis and health and wellness and nature all sort of synchronize in one. And we have also known that even the great herbalists from corners of the earth that have come to Dominica. We can call off probably Dr. Sebi. In Mamu days, Dr. Sebi was living on the island from Honduras. They call himself proclaimed for curing a a lot of the AIDS and cancer through just using phytopharmaceutical and herbal remedies. We also have also Ras Bobby in Dr. Sebi days that amassed a lot of the teachings of Dr. Sebi and what of the knowledge he was able to gain there and with the Rastafarian movement. We also have the from the president of the Dominica Rastafarian Association residing in Jamaica, also has contacts with the Jamaican societies and Rastafarian communities there who can pass on a lot of the different tradition and knowledge and stuff. So I always try to communicate, and I mean, they know it's almost one Caribbean family and region, and I try to share as much information with them as possible to further assist their endeavors into cannabis. Even at the agricultural level in Dominica, we have Almario Kazimi, who's also cannabis enthusiast and definitely have shown a lot of interest into the decriminalization and even the legalization aspect of cannabis. So we have a number of prominent Dominicans, even including myself, that as long as we're ready to charter a path, if we're allowed to assist in the
He
strategic.
said, when scared ready. Just say that no, when scared ready. Check you.
Well, if when he's ready, definitely if he wants to hear my perspectives, I'm more than willing to offer my perspectives. It definitely helps with global integration and particularly within the cannabis territory of the Caribbean region. But a lot of different areas of parts of the world, like Africa, is now coming on board. Areas like South Africa, Uganda, Malawi, Rhodesia, um, Kenya. So you have a number of states that is now coming into the legalization aspect. Some of their laws are more geared towards export, shipping the material into the European Union. You also have areas like Germany that not too long ago, last year, they came on board, and Holland is also a prominent feature, which has been decriminalized and operating coffee shops with sort of cannabis coffee shops for a very long time. You have Uruguay and who has sort of been almost one of the first nations down there to sort of legalize cannabis, and a few states within the US. I mean, it's still federal regulated as a class one scheduled substance. So across the board, it's federally sort of illegal. But individual states and Colorado being the first, and then you had California and other states providing huge market, and even throughout the first couple of years in Colorado, they've raised up to 500, close to 500 million. In California, over $1 billion, and that's in tax revenue for the government. Even in Canada, the latest figures that came out over the last 5 years, the Canadian government was able to raise over $1 billion in tax revenue. So it provides opportunities where most of these tax revenues can be plowed back to create social equity programs, help underrepresented groups, provide schools, develop infrastructure that is needed to further push the industry forward. And me, I'm just playing my part and my role in an area that I'm passionate about. And as when you were a young man and you were always telling us, Gade, sake fini la viso.
That they used to tell you.
So these were some of the remarks in the society, because with the war on drugs in 1937 leading all into the late 19th century, there was big stigma around cannabis, and it was not something that was that the community wanted people to openly consume. If we look at repatriative justice, we have to even look at our own country in Dominica and look at where we had enact the Dread Act, where we have shoot
1970s. Uh-huh.
People who look like me, we could have shot them on sight because they were associated with cannabis, apart from claims of other crimes and stuff that they would be committing within the wider parts of the society that would lead to unfavorable destruction. So
Mhm.
looking at all what stemmed from our own history, we definitely will have to know how we chart our own way forward, and it may not look the same for every Caribbean territory or region, though we have the same favorable climate, but we may have inherently sort of um, different probably values as each country, how we perceive or we see the industry, and where we would target the sort of most economic gains that could benefit the society on a whole. But overall, when people hear about cannabis, they normally think it's just smoking the product. There are many different forms of cannabis. You can have a cannabis beer. You have cannabis infused beverages. You have topicals, cannabis shampoos, cannabis lotion. Cannabis skincare products for the beauty industry. Um, there are many different ways you can extract the raw material, develop isolates, and plow that into very much value added products that even seniors can use for arthritis, rheumatism, and a living pain relief. The fastest man in the water in the world, Michael Phelps, he's a smoker of cannabis. He's the
Mhm.
fastest person in the water that we have ever seen in our lifetime. The
Mhm.
fastest man on a track field, Usain Bolt. He's
Mhm.
also a user of cannabis. So, I mean, if the fastest man in water and the fastest man on land, um, if they both use cannabis, that is just telling me, and they both have a combine of probably close to 30 gold medals. It's definitely telling me that champions use cannabis. You
Mhm.
know, so we're trying our best to sort of break down the stigma, and for mental even anxiety and depression and insomnia and
Mhm.
even appetite in cancer patients,
Mhm.
epilepsy, seizures, multiple sclerosis.
Horses. Mhm.
Yeah, so there are many Parkinson disease. There are many different aspects that it has already been proven that cannabis provides immediate alleviation
Relief.
that
Mhm.
improves the quality of life and improve health. So definitely, it is something of open discussion within societies, but you have to pretty much have open discussion with the communities and see how people feel about it, because they are also part and parcel of development. They also make up the stakeholders, because the development will ultimately happen in their communities, and you want them to sort of have a say and stuff, and see how that they feel before going about creating laws and creating regulations that complements the local communities, so that they all feel well. Everybody can probably partake, and pretty much it can be a cannabis industry where all is sort of welcomed.
Well, we can also add to that. You mentioned Usain Bolt and Michael Phelps, and we can also say, Brandon Roberts, the master grower. He's a user of cannabis.
I mean, like, I don't have a Olympic gold medal, but yes,
But you're a master grower.
I do consume, and there was one Olympic gold medalist from Canada, Ross Batatelli.
Mhm.
Um, he also visited the sugarcane facility here in British Columbia, because he's also from British Columbia. He also won the gold medal for the first, I believe, snowboarding sort of within the Winter Olympics. And
Mhm.
what happened is that when they found out that he went down the slopes high as a kite, but he was the best and the fastest, going down that slopes, and they stripped his medal away for a couple of days, and he created an uproar about it and said, well, cannabis is a plant, and if people are allowed a banana, and that also helps to stimulate performance, and yet still their medals are not stripped away. So he eventually got back his medal, and sort of became a sort of icon in sports and cannabis development. However, when you look at the anti-doping agency that controls the Olympic Committee, cannabis is still sort of illegal and sort of banned substance. But number of individuals and athletes alike have shown that
Advocated.
it has helped with the recovery of their bodies, particularly after putting their bodies under these intense pressures and of the sporting discipline. It allows them to sort of recuperate as quickly as possible. And there are different aspects of cannabis. Sometimes you might have a CBD strain that is high in that particular cannabinoid, but it's not something if you consume via smoking that will get you high,
Yeah,
so
and I like that you said that, because just over the last little while, I've been like learning all the different types, like the ones, some because everybody's like, oh, when you smoke weed or when you take, you're gonna get sleepy. But there are those that will make you sleepy and those that'll make you very alert. Like, it just depends on the strains and what you're taking and what you're taking it for. And I mean, it's become so, what is the word, it's become so, it's evolved so much that there's so much to it that you cannot just shut it down and say, hey, it's not gonna, that's not gonna work, because there's multiple different ways you could possibly go when you think of cannabis. Like, you could think of it from from putting using in food, like I know people use it as flavoring for food, to like all kinds of stuff. And when I learned all of these different things, I was just like, I was so shocked that the thing that was that has been criminalized for so long, as when you smoke it, it's gonna get you high, or it makes you hallucinate. That's what we learned in school. Cannabis is a drug that makes you high, and you will hallucinate, and all of these different things, and that has changed drastically.
well, the stigma and tearing down the historical barriers, and becoming aware of why the drug was scheduled as a class one substance, and pretty much it was used for social political control, and it worked effectively during that time. Whatever area they saw that they wanted to suppress at the need um, of the world, that they successfully did it. But now, coming under, you had this sort of hippie culture in North America that still sort of rebelled, almost like the Rastafarianism movement within the Caribbean region. And not only that too, even parts of Africa, even Ethiopia. That's why sort of Rastas sort of connect with the use of cannabis, because when we look at our own history as a people, we have only seen when all the other African states would cooperate with the colonizers to either sell people through the slave trade through direct or indirect rule, dependent if they will rule under the British or the French. And the only place in Africa that said, well, we're not selling our people, and we don't think that we want any other groups of people to come and colonize us, was under, His Majesty Haile Selassie. And, and, and
Ethiopia.
and he was a cannabis user. He was seen with cannabis plants in his estate, watering and since in this beginning, and he kept out Mussolini and the Italians, the dictator at the time, from invading Ethiopia, and
Hmm.
and this is the first account for Black history that we can look back and see, well, that really stood where, when we look for examples, and I'm learning that in a Caucasian school.
I know
You
it.
know, they are proud to point out examples where blacks and other groups of races rebelled against imperialism and colonization. But among our own people, you talk about this and that, and they tell you, well, to they don't really uphold that value within
Mhm.
our sort of own black heritage of why certain groups of people were allowed to invade, and they could not have invaded Ethiopia through the works of Selassie.
They keep it from slavery and after, so they don't they insist on not wanting to go beyond that, because beyond that would mean a level of enlightenment, a level of empowerment that we would receive as Black people, realizing that we were not always slaves. So and that's important what you mentioned, and a lot of folks are commenting under the live. Brandon, you are a wealth of knowledge. We could stay. I did warn them that we did spend 6 hours talking. So if you see audio, if audio don't feed me, we can stay here until them talking, because Brandon is a wealth of knowledge. I tell you, that night I was at my desk, I went in the kitchen, I came back at my desk, I was on my bed, we were just going back and forth, and I think I even twisted my whole hair while we were talking, right? And
well, you see, when you connect with your village people you haven't connected with for a long time, at that time I think I was even drinking a glass of wine.
You had a couple glasses of wine. Nice try.
Yeah. So when you connect with your village people, childhood, even when I normally went down to Niagara Falls in a conference last year, I went normally to go and check all the Vegas people within the geographical area of Ontario. Auntie Irma out in Brampton area, even Ray out in Bimsville. Most time I go, Ray give me some kako and fei boaden and spice and stuff. So we always have that sort of Caribbean and we always look out for our neighboring people around the area, and it keeps the tradition and sort of stuff alive, even if we're not in Dominica, but we still are Dominicans at heart.
And it's always such a pleasure talking to you. Earlier on today, we connected because I had to send you the link and stuff, and we started a whole nother conversation. And before we knew it, I was like, "Yo, I need to go get ready. Like, we need to go." So we could talk forever. And I think a huge part of what we might try to do is see how we can bring more cannabis education across my platform, a different platform, thinking of ways to do that. I know you've just recently started a nonprofit. I don't know just how much you can talk about it. I know it's still technically in the works, but a huge part of it has to do with being able to empower others, and I want to commend you on that. I don't know if you want to share anything as it relates to your nonprofit.
Well, we cannot give so much information now,
As yet,
just because the law firm that is working on the charity status of the profit can really speak about it in depth when you have to get it under the Canadian Revenue Agency. But it is a registered sort of foundation, and it's called OPMA. It's a Universal Plant Medicine Association, and we'll start by providing scholarships for students that even attended the school that I attended at the University of Guelph at various levels throughout Canada as well, and international students who also are able to probably attend, and to assist further drive in mobilizing efforts to assist individuals who may be interested and have a particular interest in helping to sort of grow the phytopharmaceutical pharmacology industry here in Canada, and it further, we can see that it's sort of well received in looking at different components of theories and that is put into sort of approaches within the cannabis industry, and how we look at different contexts all over the world, and implementing sort of going through the issues that we may face in different regions, and implementing best practices. So it's very important to continue to sort of shed light on the necessary steps that will further assist individuals who have a particular interest to complete schooling and to go and to receive sort of formal education. As I say, if you want to be the change, or if you want to advocate for change, you
Gotta be the
first
change.
you first have to be the change you want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you cannot understand that parable, it's going to be increasingly difficult to advocate for change. And that's my area where I connect cannabis to people development,
Mm-hmm.
looking at the different aspects that that takes to build the development aspect of cannabis from the ground level all the way from the laws and the regulations that also deals with the processing, distribution, and sales of legal cannabis. So it's an opportunity to provide wider audience from Canada. Even you're doing lecturing at one of the branches of the University of Guelph.
Yes, yes, yeah.
At,
Because I mean, we were just like, oh my god, like we on the same, like we actually like we're on the same path. So it's wonderful.
the Richton campus is another perfect example of the school trying
Yes.
to push agricultural development within the Ontario region.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, by wider Canada, because Guelph has almost about 140 something years within its existence. So,
Mm-hmm.
and it helps as a sort of research base for all the farmers within the wider parts of the country. So,
Mm-hmm.
and not only that, but a lot of international development work is also at play, helping with African communities. And it doesn't have to be in cannabis. Guelph is doing multiple work in the research of agricultural development, working with small scale farmers, working with farmers in rural development, environmental designs, and those areas to further provide sustainable development and helping to work in sync with the UN Sustainable Developmental Goals, to reduce poverty and what have you not, sustainability and in all the different facets of growth and development of humanities. So, on a whole, we are all one connected, globalized and civilized sort of village, and we have a growing population that we have to continuously feed, and we're up to about 9 billion, and it's gonna take an enormous charge to feed those population. When we even look at our own Dominican context, we're in a
Mm-hmm.
zone where we are prone to natural disasters. We are prone to exogenous shocks. Even if you would have to get every Dominican today fully employed and working, we would still need outside assistance from the globalized community, because we're in an area where problems are going to happen more frequently than none. And we would just not be able to be a fully capitalist society and say that we don't need nobody. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we have to understand our own history as well, the context of our own country, and see where we are poised and how we can work towards building a prosperous nation, but also looking at the account of disasters and shocks that we will experience externally that can just wipe out all the gains or all the benefits that is made over time, and then again and again we're gonna need assistance
Assistance.
from the international community. So our geographical location alone poses a high risk and challenge to development of the country. These are
Brandon, we have some people there that who have they're asking you to send them a plane, and they're ready to get on board that plane. They're moving to Canada. You have like a group of people and they're fighting for seats on the plane. So I just want to go to the chat, and just a few people or just voicing some things. Somebody says, Divine says, time to get on board and be open-minded about cannabis like ASAP. So that's one of the things someone is saying. Someone else is saying black people don't like looking for history before they were enslaved. Someone was also saying, um, my sister was saying that she's used cannabis um, as an alternate to using nebulizer. Well, I think all everybody that raised up Vegas smoking marijuana.
Yeah. Well, I know your sister also received a PhD, and she also consumed cannabis.
Yes.
She grew up writing our meats. So
Everybody
it's
have a Vegas smoke marijuana. Everybody, like practically everybody on the live who's from our like our from Benjamin Street, that little curve going
I mean,
around to
all about
to
all
to
about
the
Becca,
headset.
all about Becca's. I
And
mean,
we didn't turn out badly, eh? We didn't turn out badly now.
well, I mean, there was always a false notion that attached with cannabis. So it
Mhm.
doesn't. If I always tell people, if you're lazy, you lazy already.
You
Don't blame
lazy, period. Ever.
don't blame it on cannabis. If you
Exactly.
if you don't have ambition, you don't have ambition. Don't blame it on cannabis. So if you fair.
Well, fair, period.
So if you're a creative thinker and you smoke cannabis, it will aid you in creative thinking. If you are a liberator, you smoke cannabis, it will aid you in that growth. So, most people, book writers, sportsmen, as we call
Shara,
develop,
Shara is like, I don't consume cannabis. Shara
you
is
know.
killing me.
So, and that's okay too, So that's
You,
why I
when
say,
you believe Shara?
that's why I also say in the society you also have people that will always be for and against it. Like the
Mhm,
other day, I had an elderly lady sometime last year who came from Saskatchewan who visited the facility, and she was in her 70s, and she grew up in a society where the war on drugs and cannabis during her time, and she was so amazed to go through the farm, indoor farm, and to be engulfed with the essential oils that come from the cannabis. That alone was therapeutic healing for her.
Wow. She
That
she she
alone,
she got younger by 20 years, eh?
that alone created a sense of harmony. And she was also an avid gardener,
Mm-hmm.
so she understands a lot of the principles of the farming. And it made her felt, well, wow, she have had that concept of cannabis all her life, and she being in her 70s and a Caucasian woman is feeling, wow, it's a total different perspective. And that's what made me came out in terms of outreach. We also had a group of contingents that came from the governor's general office in Ottawa, and they visited roughly around 20 so plus individuals and of emerging leaders throughout the
Mm-hmm.
Canadian country, and they
Mm-hmm.
visited the facility, and I gave them a speech, and they were so moved, and they could not believe that when I asked all of them, each one by one, where did they came from in Canada, and when I could tell them all their streets that are leading to their areas, and they were so shocked because they have never met anybody who could describe Canada so well to them, that made them feel so tearful,
Oh.
because they can see, well, yeah, he has actually been in all our communities, you know.
You're passionate. You're passionate not only about what you do, but you're passionate about people,
but
right?
but but they are the ones making up the industry, and they were
Exactly.
the ones who told me, you know what, we would like you for you to be a voice and help to spread sort of the ways to develop the industry, and it's from that point I felt moved by them. That's why I started speaking about cannabis. That's when I really came out and started speaking about, but I already had 5 years already within cannabis, either as a master grower working for multiple companies, or a director working with multiple outfits all across the country. And you know, is you have to want to do something. If you don't want to really do it for your own self, and the ambition has to come from you first.
Period.
And it's when that can come from you, it is then it assists you to help others, because this is about more or less assisting people, you
Mm-hmm.
know assisting seniors,
Mm-hmm.
assisting youth, assisting even the LGBTQ community plus. There has been a long life stigma with them also using cannabis and being in the closet with cannabis users. And so to speak, because it was something that was so stigmatized about. And in Canada and North America country, it's getting increasingly popular, where they want acceptance within the general society, and the laws, and the way that we once perceived about individuals are gradually shifting. It definitely helps to broaden, irrespective of color, class, race, creed, sexual orientation, or whatever way that they choose to identify with. That at the end of the day, it's a human being. And no human being or child should be left behind in the cannabis development and movement. There was a young child in the States called Charlotte, and she suffered from severe epilepsy and seizures.
Seizures. Mm-hmm.
And there was a strain named after her because she was able to find relief from a very tender age, even before 5, 6 years old. And nothing that her parents tried never worked. And the cannabis plant was the only plant that provided her relief and stopped
Mm-hmm.
the seizures. When we look at history, China has been using cannabis for pain relief for many years in
Mm-hmm.
ancient times. Even for women in childbirth, cannabis was also a substance used for women in childbirth. So you have plenty medical benefits that are still getting explored through research, because every day we discover new cannabinoids, we discover new terpenes that come from the plant, like the same terpenes that we have in sort of basil, peppermint, limes, lemons, oranges, grapefruits, tangerine. We can find all this in cannabis.
Wow.
So, so they provide therapeutic healing for us in that sense, because the essential oils and the aroma and flavor that comes from them are the very same that comes from these fruits. We are also finding it in cannabis. So it offers a wide range of exploring the plant to its fullest, that will allow multiple people from all walks of life to benefit from it. Under our rules and regulations in Canada, you also allow for packaging that has child safety lock,
Mm-hmm.
that also assists in preventing
The strong ones, yeah, the strongest of them.
children from opening them. And but also from the other side, they're also saying that it adds to a lot of environmental waste, added packaging and added plastic within our environment, and looking at ways we can come up with solutions to lessen on the impact of environmental degradation through having either the landfills get filled up with plastics, or probably rock wool or different medium that is used to accommodate the cultivation and sort of packaging and distribution of the product. So it's something where um, the industry will eventually, almost like we see a lot of small micro cultivation companies are sprouting up
Hmm.
within cannabis. If you have been to British Columbia, even the Okanagan region, where we have sort of Canada's probably only desert, we classify it as a desert, it's sort of semi-arid. I lived there a couple of years, and within the vineyards, there's a big cannabis, not cannabis, but wine tourism industry. And we're sort of pursuing sort of the same model from that industry to sort of incorporate and inculcate it into cannabis tourism. Osoyo's, Oliver, these are areas we consider Canada's, where the first fruit in Canada's come from. It's the
Mm-hmm.
warmest part of the country, and stretching all the way to Kelowna. You have Summerland, you have the Vernon, and what we call Lake Country. So it's some of the warmer areas within sort of British Columbia that allow us to grow fruits very early. A lot of the vineyards, a lot of the peaches, a lot of the apples, a lot of the orchard do come from those areas. The cherries. Sometimes you might pass there in the winter and they hardly have snow on the ground. But with the vineyard, that's some of the nicest areas that I would love to go, and most of the time during my spare time I would go and get Caribbean sort of similar food. You could go and get octopus and stuff, and different
Chatu.
different seafood that good for that complements with wine. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's within the industry, it's very similar, where they too have striving outdoor farmers within those areas who came and bought land. Even a few of the millionaires or billionaires within the US also invested within those areas. um, but when we look at the overall industry, getting small businesses, they're always movers of every economy. Small farmers, they're also movers of every economy, and getting them trained and getting them, sort of ready to sort of partake, and how they can assist and partake within the general cannabis structure, and under the compliance and regulation of the government, because
Mm-hmm.
it's a regulated drug. It is regulated under the Control Drug and Substances Act under Health Canada. Um, so you have a lot of rules to follow, and to ensure that things from a regulatory standpoint remain compliant.
Mm-hmm.
And if not, you could lose your license, like even your driver's license. You could lose your cannabis producer's license, or cannabis processing license, or what category of license that you have, if the rules are not followed under the legislation. So it is something that will evolve and grow with time, particularly where we have, the regulations being amended to suit different areas that were overlooked during the engagement process, and obviously looking at where adjustments that can be made in terms of improvement, and keeping as much producers and processors within the industry. Even being on the Washington state border, I lived there for a couple of years as well, and the farmers on the other side that were into hemp from Tennessee, Washington, Oregon, stretching all the way back to the California area, a lot of them lost their lives because they thought that hemp would have been the new green gold, and they found hundreds of acres and invested millions of dollars. And when they harvested the crop in the fall, and they realized that the country, even in the state, was not even advanced as yet in terms of having the number of processing facilities to process the farmer's output that came from the farm. And having cold storage would take them into the hundreds of thousands for developing that aspect, if not close to millions, based on the acreages that they were farming at. And you had so many backlogs within the system. The only way that they could have kept the land in their family names were to commit suicide. And a lot of the farmers committed suicide when a lot of the crops, the entire harvest went to
Was
waste, and,
waste.
and, and,
Mm-hmm.
and get rot in totes on the outside. It was almost, these are things you may not really hear in the media, but in communicating and networking with a broad range of farmer
And
groups.
researching it, you can find out about it if you research it.
Exactly, and
Yeah,
research.
it's out there. It's not as amplified as
Right.
other things,
But
but it's
yeah,
there.
but it's
It's
there.
very
It's
there.
they were able to tell me on a one-on-one, because
Hmm.
in growing the forest trees. In the silviculture industry, majority of the business owners that would either create the jiffy plugs or create the machinery needed to cultivate millions of trees in a short space area. The technology and that aspect really came from the US area, although we have certain parts in Canada that are set up for it. But majority of that aspect really came from certain parts there.
Brendon, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. I say part two. Part two.
Happy to be on the show. Happy
Part-
to have a discussion with the audience, and definitely feel free to reach out when you're ready for part two, and we can sort of get you scheduled in and see what
our busy schedule. I almost I wanted to ask you this one final question, and you're gonna give me a very, very short answer, because I want to know. Well, I know the answer, but I think people want to know, because they've heard you talk about so many different things. But what do you do to kind of just relax? What do you do? What is your
Well, I'm on the road all the time. So, for example, going back to my home, if I would have to go back to my home, that alone is like a 30-hour drive, like 30. So sometimes you're on the road for days, but it's also always refreshing for my mind. I love road trips. I love camping. So when I go at my
so the next one I'm coming, right? The next one I'm coming.
I do normally, friends come up, we do fishing expeditions.
I don't know about the fishing. I don't know about the fishing one. I am talking about, I don't mind the camping and the road trip. The road trip I want to do. I don't know about the fishing.
I also live next to a campground, but in a very good day, we have like 50 American boats coming up from the south of the border coming. But we hold a lot of fish too. I eat fish, a lot of fish. Not same as the seawater fish, but the trout and stuff, they taste almost like salmon, and the walleye, the pickerel. We hold the walleye masters, but we also do hunting, foraging for blueberries, raspberries, wild berries, lots of that there. Mushrooms, plethora of edibles, mushrooms that are edibles within the forest, that are delicacies at most Canadian restaurants. Most of these things there. You just have to be equipped for the woods as well, because it's not like the Dominica jungle. You can just put your
I know.
we have wood ticks, we have horse flies, deer flies, we have bears. You will meet, the timber wolves. Sometime in the summer, you could hear them howling out from Minnesota. So in the winter time, so you have so many different animals. It's like you always have to be prepared. Get yourself sprayed down, and otherwise you're not really you wouldn't really survive out there too long with all these because
you stay there. I'll do the road trip. Somebody wants to know if you're still troublesome. Alicia Honore is saying she's so proud of you, her classmate. Keep shining. A few folks are coming on, and now I'm seeing them, and they're just shouting you out. They want to know if you're still troublesome.
Well, they always know me as a troublesome guy. And most probably notorious as probably one of the best cadman. I didn't know me as gambling across the country as well.
We didn't even talk about that. That is another story.
So all the dangerous holes from Maho to Wesley, Sam's Gutter to La Tetlale to Ansdime, Peebush, Penville, Thibault.
You used to go and gamble there. Upa Feb.
We played a lot of cards. It's similar to poker, and I was very good at it. And even our village chairman, right now, they would say, Brendon ever junior can assistir like a, no ale dormir, no lever, ever, you still like a jouer carte, ever gamble, ever, so, I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm a saint, I'm clearly not a saint, but at the same time, all that was part.
I heard about your exploits, you and my father.
Well, yeah, your dad was always playing dominoes together with us. He was also a good domino guy for dominoes for beers. I also captain our domino team from the village. We would go to Cottage, we would go to Asolda, Peebush, Penville, and play with the different teams. And I will leave you off with one of the quotes that I always used to say, and he also gave me an addition to that quote, and we can probably cut off the program for today. One of my favorite quotes that I came up with, and your dad was a walking dictionary. Yeah, he was somebody who was very good with words, and he knew that I was good with words as well. So I would always come up with some aspects of and test his knowledge to see how he could add to it. And I tell him first, you have to, inspire, and then you aspire, and after you aspire, you perspire, and after you perspire, you retire. And after you retire, I was stuck there, and I met him by the bus stop that day. And he told me, you know what? After you retire, you expire. So, so he was one who can help me keep up with you. Inspire, you aspire, you perspire, and after you perspire, you retire. And after you retire, you expire. So I still live, by that sort of lingo today, and that's pretty much the basis of anybody who, want to achieve hard work through success. And it's definitely something that the wider audience can take as a good message home.
Brendon, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. It was such a pleasure having you on the show. I appreciate your time. We've been talking for nearly 3 hours, which is crazy. This has been my longest show ever. I wanted to give you full reign to speak because we did. There was so much prep done for the show in terms of conversations we had. There was so much I knew to talk about. There's so much I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to ensure that everything was okay with you, and we could talk about any and everything, and I was not stepping on your toe or making you relieve any unwanted trauma or anything. And you're such a good sport, and you're such an inspiration to a lot of us who are older than you too, but you're an inspiration to all of us. You've done so remarkably well for yourself, and I want to wish you continued success. And I mean I say that like as if you're going far. We right there. We'll always stay in touch with each other. But I want to thank you again for your time, and thank you so very much for joining us today.
Well, you're most welcome, Jael, better known as Shelley, and I would say, even for the cannabis industry, provide opportunities, what we call auxiliary opportunities, like what you do through broadcasting. Cannabis journalism is also a thing here, and it's something that young people that express the confidence for social media, mass network, and media operations can definitely hone on situations like those. But I'm an open book, and I love to inspire and help people. If I'm helping people within the Canadian country, is not my own people that I grew up among, that I won't assist. That's just the nature of who I am. I like to see people thrive and do their stuff, and see how best that I can help them, if I can help them along their journey. Big up again to Bloombox, who has assisted you in sponsorship, in bringing more of these sorts of programs for individuals within our wider society that can benefit from horticultural development. It's not a dying art, it's actually highly regarded in the first world countries. And normally, as I tell people, when they tell me what was my biggest culture shock when I first landed in the country, and they thought I would say the big roads or the skyscrapers, and I told them the biggest culture shock was the food, the transition of the food.
Mhm.
Because when I ate in Dominica, I could work for hours. We ate more wholesome food. When I
Mhm.
ate here, the food tastes like the state of the art,
Mhm.
top of the line.
Mhm.
But in terms of energy, it's very depleted. In less than 30 minutes, you're barely making kyok
Kyok.
according to Dominicans.
You're
So,
making kyok.
yeah, so at the end of the day, understanding our own food system and the value that come from it is important, because if you cannot feed yourself as a nation and you depend on the outside world to feed you, then it's inevitable they're going to control you. And there's no if, no buts about it. So, food security remains paramount in feeding the civilized and globalized community. And we are no different in Dominica to provide the same sort of food security for our own people and nation, particularly thinking in terms of resilience and looking at how that we are always at risks to different shocks. So after Maria, a lot of the underground provisions would have saved our population for food on for normally for days, like the tanyas, the dashins, the potatoes, the yams. These were all underground sort of tubers and even if majority of the crops and the shoot system above ground were damaged, the reserves below soil was also a resilient aspect in our own domestic food supply and sort of
Mhm.
food sovereignty program on the island. So definitely it's a pleasure, and I don't want to exhaust the listeners. We look
You can
forward
start another conversation again. You can start another one.
we look we look forward to sometime in the near future to bringing back the show that probably provide them with an opportunity to ask more of their questions and
Questions, yes.
and interact with the public in a way where it's beneficial for them, and probably areas they may be intrigued about within agriculture, horticulture, or even cannabis development.
Mhm. Thank you, Brendon. Thank you very, 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 very much. On that note, I want to big up my sponsors. Thank you very much for your kind sponsorship. Bloombox.
Welcome to Bloombox.
Thank you again, Brendon, for joining us. Until next time. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.
Thanks to all those of you who tuned in. Oh my God, what a show! What a show! I mean, my longest ever show. And it's before Jean Vegas, and that's okay, right? That's okay. So I want to say thank you guys, every single one of you who logged in, who stayed on. My God, thank you for tuning in. Those of you who shared the live, thank you for sharing the live. Those of you who come back and watch it in pieces and share it with somebody, let people know. Very wonderful show. I appreciate Brendon and all of the wealth of knowledge. Brendon can talk for hours. You see what I tell you guys? We spoke for 6 hours. Look at that. 3 hours. Like, it's so easy to speak for 6 hours with Brendon. Thank you, every single one. My Javekas who were tuned in, my Itasians, big up yourselves. Shara, Janice, Aurel. I saw Nadisha. Who else? What is Javekas that was on the live? I saw you guys. Mentos. Big up to you guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. Until next time, I try to bring you this show at least once a month. So hoping to bring you another one next month We'll let you know. We'll keep you updated. You got to stay tuned. Follow me here. Follow me on YouTube. This was also streamed on LinkedIn. So thank you again, guys. Until I have another show ready for you, I have something cooking, but I can't tell you too much about it because I got to do a pre-interview with that guest first. But I want to encourage you to stay tuned. And thanks again for all of the love and all of the support. Until next time, I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.